The ghost in the machine has a name. It's Kellen. 5 years. That's how long I've been dead. A digital phantom haunting the grimy, forgotten substructures of Viridia, the city I helped build. Up there in the clean, rain-washed spires that pierce the perpetual gray clouds, they run on Aura. My Aura. The operating system that became the city's central nervous system. They think it belongs to Ethelred. They think it belongs to her, Serafina Valerios. But every line of code whispers my name. Every seamless transaction, every flicker of a holographic advertisement, every automated transport that glides silently along magnetic tracks, it all bears my invisible signature. I am the architect of their gilded cage, and they have lived in blissful ignorance for 1,825 days. I've counted each one. My world now is a 4-meter by 4-meter cube, a forgotten maintenance node carved into the city's foundations. The air tastes of ozone, recycled oxygen, and damp concrete. The only light is the cold, blue-white glow from a bank of monitors, their screens reflected in my eyes. This is my tomb and my throne. From here I watch, I listen, I wait. My fingers, thin and pale, dance across a keyboard worn smooth by years of obsessive use. The keys don't click. I modified them for silence, for secrecy. Sound is a luxury I cannot afford. I see her sometimes. Serafina. Her face, impossibly perfect, plastered across 1,000 screens. The CEO of Ethelred. The savior of Viridia. Her hair is the color of spun gold. Her eyes the color of a summer sky. She speaks of progress, of security, of a unified future. Her voice is like honey, smooth and sweet and cloying. When I hear it, the rage I keep banked and cooled within me stirs like a slumbering dragon. It's a physical thing, a pressure behind my ribs, a cold fire in my gut. I have to close my eyes, regulate my breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. The mantra of the living dead: control is everything. Emotion is a vulnerability. Serafina taught me that, in her own cruel way. The memory is always there, waiting in the wings. It never fades, it only sharpens. The boardroom. The smell of expensive leather and imported coffee. The faces of the board members, a gallery of stone-faced statues. And Serafina, standing before them, her expression a mask of sorrowful duty. She held up the dataship, my dataship, the one with the fabricated evidence of corporate espionage, of selling Aura's core secrets to a rival syndicate. Her voice laced with regret. I never would have believed it of Kaylin. She was like a sister to me. The lie was so audacious, so complete. It was almost beautiful in its monstrosity. I remember the shock, the cold wave of disbelief that washed over me, rendering me mute. I looked at her, searching for a flicker of the woman I thought I knew. The friend I'd trusted, the partner I'd built a dream with. I found nothing. Only the polished, impenetrable surface of a predator. They didn't send me to prison. That would have been too public, too messy. A trial would have meant questions, and questions were the one thing Serafina cannot allow. No, my sentence was quieter. A public shaming, a termination, a complete digital erasure. My credentials, my bank accounts, my identity all deleted from the Aura network. In a city run by Aura, to be deleted is to cease to exist. They escorted me from the Ethelred Tower, stripped of my possessions, and left me on a rain-slicked street with nothing but the clothes on my back and a name that was now synonymous with treason. They expected me to disappear, to drink myself into oblivion in some gutter, or to throw myself from one of Viridia's gleaming bridges. They presumed me dead. And for a time the first year was about survival. I learned the city's hidden pathways, its forgotten tunnels, and abandoned substations. I learned to move like a rat, unseen, unheard. I ate what I could scavenge, slept where I could find shelter from the ceaseless rain. The rage kept me warm. The second year was about remembering. I forced myself to recall every line of code I ever wrote for Aura, every backdoor I'd built in, my little secret vanities, the K-ports, I called them. Private access points hidden behind layers of quantum encryption known only to me. A contingency for a disaster I never imagined would be my own betrayal. The last 3 years have been about planning, about watching. From this node, I have woven myself back into the fabric of my own creation. I am a whisper in the system, a ghost in the wires. I see everything. I see Seraphine's encrypted communications, her private financial records, her web of influence and corruption that spreads through Viridia like a cancer. She has used Aura to consolidate power, to eliminate rivals, to build an empire on the foundations of my work. She is brilliant, I'll give her that, but she is arrogant. She believes she is untouchable. She believes I am gone. That is her. Fatal mistake. Tonight, the waiting ends. For 5 years, I have been a spectator. Now, I become the director. My plan is a delicate instrument, a house of cards built with surgical precision. To succeed, I need one thing I do not have. An anchor. In the physical world, a pair of hands I can trust. And there was only ever one person who fit that description. Mika. Her name feels foreign on my tongue, a word from a different lifetime. Mika, my lead engineer. Grounded, practical, brutally honest Mika. She never liked Serafina. That woman smiles with her teeth, Kai. She told me once, her brow furrowed with concern. You see a partner, I see a shark. I had dismissed it as cynicism. One of my many, many mistakes. After my fall, Mika was demoted. Shuffled off to a forgotten corner of Ethelred's sprawling R&D department. Maintenance, they called it. A glorified janitorial crew for legacy systems. It was a message from Serafina. Loyalty to Kaelin has consequences. I've watched Mika for years. Watched her trudge to work, her shoulders heavy. Watched her leave late at night, her face etched with a weariness that went beyond her job. She stayed. I was never sure why. Maybe she had nowhere else to go. Maybe, just maybe, she was waiting too. Contacting her is the greatest risk I have. Taken in 5 years. A direct message, no matter how well encrypted, carries a trace. A whisper that could be heard by the right ears. No, this has to be done the old way, face to face. It means leaving my sanctuary. It means exposing myself to the city, to the million digital eyes of Aura, to her eyes. The thought sends a tremor through my hands. I still them on the cool metal of my console. Control. I pull up a schematic of the city's undergrid, a labyrinth of service tunnels and pneumatic tubes. I plot a course, a path of least surveillance. It's not perfect. There are gaps in my knowledge, places where new sensors might have been installed, but it's the best I can do. I slip a slim dataship into a port on my console and begin transferring. A small, heavily encrypted data package. The first piece of the puzzle. The proof I will need to give Mika. Then I stand. My legs are stiff. My reflection in the dark screens is a stranger's face. Pale skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones. Eyes that are too large, burning with a cold blue fire. My hair, once long, is now hacked short, a practical, ragged mess. I wear simple gray fatigues, devoid of any identifying marks. I am no one. And I am everywhere. I slide on a pair of thin, dark gloves and pull a hood over my head. A final check of my monitors. Serafina is hosting a gala tonight at the Ethelred Spire. The elite of Viridia will be there, sipping champagne and celebrating their own brilliance. They will be safe and secure, protected by Aura, by me. The irony is so thick it's almost suffocating. Let them party. Let them drink and dance. The foundations of their world are about to crack. I turn from the screens and face a section of the concrete wall. I press my palm against a specific spot. There is no sound, but a hairline crack appears, outlining a narrow door. Its lights open, revealing a dark, tight tunnel. The air that wafts out is cold and smells of rust and decay. My heart is a cold, steady drum against my ribs. It's time to go hunting. The journey through Viridia's guts is a disorienting symphony of drips, hums, and the distant rumble of the city above. The air is thick, a cocktail of mildew and metallic tang. I move with a practiced economy, my feet silent on the graded walkways. My world is a narrow cone of light from the headlamp strapped to my forehead, illuminating rusted pipes, thick bundles of fiber optic cables, and the occasional scurrying of some nocturnal creature. This is the city's truth. Not the gleaming chrome and holographic projections, but this dark, vital, and decaying underbelly. I've timed my journey to coincide with the shift change of the maintenance crews. Fewer eyes, human or otherwise. Still, paranoia is a constant companion. Every shadow seems to lengthen. Every drip of water sounds like a footstep. I keep one hand on the small, high-frequency sonic device in my pocket. It's not a weapon, not really. It emits a pulse that can temporarily scramble most older model security sensors, creating a small bubble of invisibility. It's a risk. Using it creates a momentary energy signature, a blip in the system that a diligent analyst might flag. But not using it is a greater risk. Mika lives in the Warrens. Sector Gamma 7. It's an older district, a vertical slum packed with crumbling residential towers that haven't seen a maintenance drone in decades. The kind of place the elite of Viridia pretend doesn't exist. It's a 20-kilometer trek through the undergrid. I count my steps, my breaths. I recite lines of code in my head. Anything to keep the fear at bay. The fear is a luxury, a distraction from the mission. After 3 hours of navigating the labyrinth, I reach an access ladder. It's rusted and the rungs are slick with grime. According to the schematic, it should lead up to a storm drain on the edge of the Warrens. I pause, listening. Nothing but the hum of the city. I kill my headlamp and begin to climb, my world plunging into absolute darkness. I climb by feel, the cold, rough metal under my gloved fingers. One rung, then the next. The air changes, growing cooler, carrying the familiar scent of rain and refuse. The storm grate above me is heavy. I push. It groans in protest, but gives way. I slide it aside just enough to slip through, my body aching from the unfamiliar exertion. I emerge into a narrow alleyway, the rain a cold shock against my face. It's night, but the sky's never truly dark in Viridia. It's a bruised purple, reflecting the endless glow of the city core miles away. Here in the Warrens, the light is muted, coming from flickering neon signs, advertising cheap synth noodles, and bootleg CYBERNETIC. The rain plasters my hood to my head. I pull it lower, keeping my face in shadow. This is the most dangerous part. Here I am visible. I am data that can be collected. I merge into the sparse flow of people huddled under awnings and makeshift shelters. Their faces are pale and drawn, their eyes vacant, the forgotten ones. I used to be one of the gods who lived in the sky, shaping their world without a second thought. Now I walk among them, a ghost of a different sort. Mika's building is a brutalist concrete tower, 20 stories of crumbling balconies and dark, narrow windows. The lobby is a dim, flickering space that smells of boiled cabbage and despair. The directory is a cracked screen, half the names unreadable. I don't need it. I know her apartment number. 17B. The elevator is out of order. Of course it is. I take the stairs. The stairwell is a vertical tunnel of graffiti and filth. My footsteps echo, loud and intrusive. On the fifth floor, a door opens and a man peers out, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. I don't look at him. I just keep climbing, my pace steady, my gaze fixed on the steps ahead. He watches me until I round the next landing dot. By the time I reach the 17th floor, my lungs are burning and my legs are trembling. I am not the person I was 5 years ago. My body is a machine fueled by rage and nutrient paste, not one. Honed by physical exertion, I lean against the wall in the dim hallway, catching my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. The door to 17B is at the end of the corridor. It's painted a faded green, the paint peeling near the lock. I walk to the door, my feet making no sound. I don't knock. A knock can be ignored. A knock is a request. This is not a request. I have a tool for this, a small cylindrical device that bypasses simple electronic locks, but I hesitate. This is the final threshold. Once I cross it, the plan is in motion. There is no turning back. The ghost steps out of the machine and into the world. I think of Serafina, her perfect smile, her honeyed voice. Like a sister to me. The cold fire in my gut flares, burning away the fear. I press the device against the lock. There's a soft click. I turn the handle and the door swings inward, opening into darkness. I slip inside, closing it silently behind me. The apartment is small. A living space, a kitchenette, a closed door that must lead to the bedroom. It's tidy, obsessively so. The faint scent of antiseptic cleaner hangs in the air. A single window looks out over the glittering expanse of the distant city. Core, the Ethelred spire, a needle of light stabbing the heavens. And then I see her, Mika. She's asleep in a worn armchair facing the window, a blanket pulled over her lap. Her hair is shorter than I remember, streaked with gray. Her face, even in sleep, is etched with lines of worry and fatigue. She looks older. We all do. I stand there in the darkness, watching her breathe. For a moment, a crack appears in my armor of cold resolve. An emotion I can't afford, a ghost of a different kind, grief. Grief for the life that was stolen from us, for the friends we were. I ruthlessly shove it down. Grief is a weakness. I am a weapon now, nothing more. I need to wake her, but how? Any sudden movement, any sound, and she might scream. And a scream in the Warrens brings the kind of attention I cannot survive. I need to control the situation from the very first. Second, I move to the center of the small room, a phantom in the gloom, and I wait. I wait for her to wake up and see the ghost that has come back from the dead. Her breathing changes, a soft sigh. Her eyes flutter open. They're unfocused at first, adjusting to the darkness. Then they drift across the room and find me. They widen. The color drains from her face. Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. She is frozen, a statue of pure shock. "Hello, Mika," I say. My voice is a rusty whisper, rough from disuse. It's been a long time. Her paralysis breaks. She doesn't scream. She does something. Far more Mika. Her hand darts to the small table beside her chair. Grabbing the heaviest thing on it, a thick glass paperweight, she hurls it at my head. I duck, and it smashes against the wall behind me, the sound like a gunshot in the silent. Apartment. "Get out," she hisses, her voice a raw, terrified rasp. She scrambles out of the chair, putting it between us, her eyes wild with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "You're dead? Am I?" I ask, my voice still quiet. I don't move. From my spot, I keep my hands open, away from my body. A gesture of peace I do not feel. Reports of my death, as they say, were greatly exaggerated. "Who are you?" She demands, her knuckles white where she grips the back of the chair. What is this? Some kind of sick joke? It's me, Mika. It's Kaylin. I take a half step forward. She flinches, dragging the chair with her as she backs away. No. She whispers, Kaylin is gone. They said she was a traitor. The word hangs in the air between us, ugly and sharp. And you believe them? The question is soft, but it carries the weight of 5 years of silence. Her eyes flicker, a flash of old loyalty, of doubt. It's the crack I was hoping for. What was I supposed to believe? You vanished. Your records were wiped. Ethelred put out a security bulletin. Espionage. They had proof. They had fabrications, I correct her, supplied by Serafina. The name lands like a stone. Mika's face hardens. Her fear is being slowly replaced by a familiar simmering anger, the anger she always had when Serafina was near. Serafina, she spits the name like poison. Of course, that bitch. She built her empire on my ghost, I say, my voice gaining strength. She took everything from me, from us. She thought she'd erased me. She was wrong. Mika stares at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She's processing. The ghost in her apartment is real. The implications are crashing down on her. 5 years, Kai. 5 years. Where have you been? Nowhere. And everywhere, I say, watching, planning. Now I'm done planning. I'm going to take it all back. And I'm going to burn her world to the ground. My own voice surprises me. The cold, analytical detachment is gone, replaced by the raw, unfiltered fury I've kept locked away for so long. Mika just stares, her mind racing. I can see the calculations in her eyes, the weighing of risks. She was always the practical one, the realist. You're insane, she says, but there's no heat in it. It's a statement of fact. You can't go against Ethelred. You can't touch Serafina. She is the city. No, I say, taking another slow step forward. I am the city. Aura is the city. And Aura is mine. I reach into my pocket and pull out the data ship. I hold it out to her in my gloved palm. This is the key, the beginning, proof of what she's done, and the first step in how we undo it. She looks from the chip to my face, her expression torn. The old Mika, the loyal friend, is at war with the new Mika, the survivor who has learned to keep her head down. Why me? She asks, her voice barely a whisper. Why come to me? You're putting a target on my back. Because you never trusted her, I say simply. Because you're the best engineer I ever knew, and because I don't have anyone else. The admission is a crack in my own armor, a sliver of vulnerability that I hate showing, but it's necessary. It's the truth. I toss the data ship onto the seat of the armchair between us. It skitters across the worn fabric and comes to a rest. A tiny piece of plastic and metal that holds the power to start a war. Look at it, I urge her. I have a terminal, secure. You can verify it yourself, then we can talk. She looks at the chip, then back at me. The fear is gone from her eyes, replaced by something else. A spark. The same spark I saw years ago when we were trying to solve an impossible coding problem, fueled by synthcaf and ambition. It's the spark of a challenge. You look like hell, Kai, she says, her voice finally steady. A small, humorless smile touches my lips. You should see the other guy. She doesn't smile back. She walks slowly around the chair, her eyes never leaving mine. She picks up the data ship, her fingers closing around it. She holds my gaze. For a long moment, a silent conversation passing between us. A conversation of shared history, of betrayal, of a possible, terrifying future. All right, Ghost, she says, her voice low and resolute. Show me what you've got. Mika's apartment became my new command center, a temporary upgrade from my concrete tomb. It felt strange, being in a real room, with furniture and a window. The air didn't taste recycled. It was a constant, low-level distraction. For 2 days, we barely spoke. The only sounds were the soft clicking of Mika's keyboard as she decrypted the data package I'd brought and the quiet hum of her terminal. I watched her, my own paranoia, a living thing in the small space. I didn't sleep. I stood by the window, a sentinel in the shadows, my gaze fixed on the distant, glittering needle of the Ethelred Tower. It was a monument to my failure, and soon it would be the stage for my revenge. Mika was methodical, her process a painstaking ballet of code and countercode. She built firewalls around her terminal, rerouted her network signal through a dozen anonymous proxies I had set up, and worked with a level of intense focus that I remembered well. She was checking my work, verifying the backdoors, the K-ports. She was testing the chains of my prison and finding that they were, in fact, the keys to the kingdom. On the third day, she finally pushed back from her terminal, rubbing her bloodshot eyes. She looked at me, and for the first time since I'd reappeared, the guarded, wary expression was gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated awe. And fury. She didn't just steal it, Mika breathed, her voice raspy with exhaustion and rage. She butchered it. She slapped her name on your work, Kai, but the core architecture, the quantum entanglement protocols, that's all you. It's still you. She shook her head, a slow, disbelieving motion. And these backdoors. They're beautiful. She never even saw them. She's been sitting on a throne with a trapdoor underneath it for 5 years and never had a clue. Arrogance makes you blind, I said, my voice flat. She never believed anyone was her equal, especially not a ghost. So what's the plan? Mika asked, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. The weary engineer was gone. The co-conspirator had arrived. You've got access to everything. Ethelred's financials, Seraphine's private comms, the entire city infrastructure grid. What's the first move? A data leak? Cripple their stock price? No, I shook my head. That's not enough. A scandal can be managed. A market dip can be recovered from. I'm not here to wound her. I'm here to erase her. We're not going to attack Ethelred from the outside. We're going to dismantle it from within, using its own systems. We're going to turn Aura against itself. My plan had 3 phases. I laid them out for her, my voice a low, steady monotone. Phase 1, the whispers. We would begin by seeding doubt. Small, untraceable anomalies within the Aura network. A fractional discrepancy in a financial report corrected before anyone important noticed. A ghost transport appearing on the city grid for a few seconds before vanishing. Minor glitches in the city's power distribution, causing flickers of light in the elite sectors. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing that could be traced back to a single source. Just tiny imperfections in Seraphine's perfect system. Little whispers of chaos. The goal was to create a subtle growing unease within Ethelred's upper management, to make them question the infallibility of their own technology, to make them paranoid. Phase 2, the cracks. We would escalate. We would use my access to manipulate information. Ethelred was in the process of negotiating a massive infrastructure deal with the Neo-Kyoto Syndicate. It was Seraphine's magnum opus, a deal that would solidify Ethelred's dominance for the next half-century. We would sabotage it, not with a bomb, but with a comma. We would subtly alter the data streams, feeding both sides slightly inaccurate information. Change a decimal point in a resource projection. Delay a key communication by a few milliseconds. Introduce just enough friction into the negotiations that the trust between the 2 mega corporations would begin to erode. We would make them suspect each other of subterfuge, never dreaming that the system they were using to communicate was lying to them. Phase 3, the collapse. This was the end game. Once the Neo-Kyoto deal fell apart, Ethelred would be vulnerable. Its stock would be in free fall. Its board would be in a panic. Seraphine's position, once unassailable, would be precarious. And that's when we would strike. We would use the K-ports to trigger a cascade failure, not a shutdown of the city. That would be too crude, and it would harm the innocent civilians I had once sworn to protect. No, this would be a surgical strike. We would lock Serafina and her entire executive board out of their own system. We would sever their access, freeze their accounts, and delete their identities. We would give them the same sentence they gave me. We would make them ghosts. And then, with the system in chaos, a new administrator would emerge to restore order. An administrator with a flawless understanding of Aura's core programming. Mika listened, her expression unreadable. When I was finished, she was silent for a full minute, her gaze distant. The scope of it, the sheer audacity, hung in the air between us. You're not just planning a corporate takedown, she said finally, her voice soft. You're planning a coup. You want to take over the city. I want what's mine, I corrected her. I built Aura to be a tool for progress, not a weapon for a tyrant. I'm taking back control of my creation. And what happens after? She pressed. You expose Serafina. You take her place. What then? You think the other corporations, the government, they'll just accept you? A dead woman coming back to life to run the most powerful OS on the planet? They won't have a choice, I said, my voice cold. When the dust settles, I will be the only one who can keep the lights on. I will be a necessary evil. And in time, they will forget. People always do. Mika leaned back, a slow, wry smile spreading across her face. It was the first time I'd seen her smile in 5 years. You always were an arrogant bastard, she said, but it was a compliment, a statement of fact. Okay, I'm in. What do we need? We need a better base of operations, I said. This place is too exposed. We need to get you out of Ethelred. You'll need to resign. Quietly, no fuss. I had already located our new sanctuary. An abandoned server farm in the industrial sector, decommissioned years ago, but still connected to the primary power grid. It was isolated, anonymous, and spacious enough for the hardware we would need. And we need equipment, processors, cooling units, interface modules. Things you can't buy at the corner store. That's a problem, Mika said, her brow furrowing. That kind of hardware is tracked. The moment we purchase it, Ethelred will know. We're not going to purchase it, I said. Ethelred is going to purchase it for us. I pulled up a file on her terminal. It was a list of dummy corporations, shell companies I'd created years ago as a contingency, their records buried deep within Aura's labyrinthine financial registries. We'll submit purchase orders through these. Ethelred's procurement system is automated. As long as the request codes are valid, and I'll make sure they are, the system will approve them. The hardware will be delivered to a series of anonymous drop points. We'll pick it up from there. Mika's smile widened. You've really thought of everything, haven't you? For 5 years, I said, I've had nothing else to do. The next 2 weeks were a blur of frantic, silent activity. Mika tendered her resignation, citing personal health reasons. The departure was so low-level it barely registered on Ethelred's internal sensors. To them, she was just another burnt-out maintenance tech. A nobody. She liquidated her meager assets, converting them into untraceable cryptocurrency. Meanwhile, I was a phantom in a machine, pulling strings, manipulating data. I initiated the purchase orders, small at first. A few processing units here, a cooling system there. The orders were routed through 3 different dummy corporations, delivered to locker bays in the city's sprawling transport nexus. Each time we'd wait, holding our breath, scanning the network for any sign of alarm. Nothing. The system, my system, processed the requests without a hitch. Seraphine's corporate machine was arming the rebels who were plotting to overthrow it. The irony was exquisite. Collecting the hardware was the most dangerous part. We moved at night using the service tunnels. Mika, it turned out, was a quick study. She learned the rhythms of the undergrid, the art of moving without being seen. I felt a pang of guilt, dragging her into my shadowy world. But then I'd see the look in her eyes, the fierce determination, and the guilt would recede. This was her choice. She was no one's victim. Our new home was perfect. The abandoned server farm was a cathedral of silence and decay. Racks of obsolete servers stood like silent monoliths in the gloom, covered in a fine layer of dust. The air was cold and still, but the power lines were alive and the fiber optic trunk lines were intact. It was a ghost in the network, just like me. We spent days cleaning, setting up our new equipment, creating a sterile, functional island in the sea of decay. Our own little cube, bigger and more powerful than my last one. While Mika handled the hardware, I began phase 1, the whispers. It was delicate work, like playing a piano made of glass. I'd slip into Ethelred's financial servers, a ghost in their ledgers. I'd change a single number in a quarterly projection, a 7 to a 6, let it sit for 3 minutes, just long. Enough for an automated audit program to flag it, then change it back before any human analyst could see. A fleeting anomaly, a digital hiccup. I manipulated the city's transport grid, spawning a single phantom cargo hauler on a trajectory through a residential sector. It existed for only 90 seconds, a ghost on the traffic control screens, causing a dozen automated systems to issue collision warnings before it simply vanished. The incident was logged as a sensor malfunction. I tweaked the power distribution network, causing a microsecond brownout in the penthouse of Ethelred's chief financial officer during his morning shower. Not enough to trip the main breakers, just enough to make the lights flicker and his sonic cleanser falter for a moment. An annoyance, a mystery, a seed of doubt. I watched their communications, the web of encrypted messages that formed the corporation's nervous system. After each incident, there was a flurry of activity, memos, technical queries, requests for diagnostic reports. They were looking for a bug, a flaw in the system. They never once considered that the system itself was sound. They never considered a ghost. One night, as I was monitoring the internal comms, I saw it. A message from Serafina to her head of security. A single encrypted line. Find the source of these glitches. I want a full diagnostic of Aura's core code immediately. I felt a cold thrill. She was taking the bait. She was getting nervous. I looked over at Micah. She was soldering a connection, her face illuminated by the brief flare of the tool. She was humming a tuneless, happy sound. She hadn't hummed in the 2 weeks we'd been here. She was finding her purpose again. We both were. It's working, I said, my voice quiet in the vast, silent room. She looked up, her eyes bright. Phase 1, I nodded. She's spooked. She's ordered a full diagnostic. Mika put down her soldering iron. Will they find anything? Will they find you? They'll be looking for a flaw in the code, I explained. But the code is perfect. The glitches aren't coming from a flaw. They're coming from a feature, my feature. The K-ports are quantum encrypted and shielded. They're part of the original architecture. To them, they're invisible. It would be like trying to find the color blue when you have no concept of color. They won't find me. They'll just find more questions. And the more they look, the more paranoid they'll become. She nodded, satisfied. So what's next? We accelerate, I said. It's time to start phase 2. I turned back to my terminal, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The Neo-Kyoto deal, Seraphine's crowning achievement. It was time to pour a little sand in the gears of her empire. I pulled up the primary communication channel between Ethelred and the Neo-Kyoto Syndicate. It was a fortress of encryption, but I had the master key. I slipped through their defenses as easily as a ghost passing through a wall. The negotiations were in a delicate stage, focused on resource allocation for a joint mining venture in the asteroid belt. It was all about numbers, projections, and trust. I found the latest data package sent by Ethelred. A projection of platinum yields from a specific asteroid cluster. The number was 1.73 grams per metric ton. A solid, profitable number. With a few keystrokes, I changed it. 1.72 grams per metric ton. A tiny, almost insignificant change. But a change that would, over the course of the project, add up to billions in lost revenue for Neo Kyoto. I didn't change the summary report, only the raw data buried deep within the package. It was a time bomb. It might take days or even weeks for their analysts to find it. But when they did, they wouldn't see it as a glitch. They'd see it as a lie. They'd see it as Ethelred trying to cheat them. I sat back, my work done. It was a strange feeling. For 5 years, I had been passive, a spectator. Now, I was an active agent of chaos. I was a saboteur, a terrorist in the digital world, and I had never felt more alive. The first crack has been made, I said to Mika, my voice resonating with a cold, hard satisfaction. Now we wait for them to notice. We didn't have to wait long. The backlash from Neo Kyoto was faster and more furious than I had dared to hope. It came 4 days after I'd poisoned the data stream. 4 days of watching the communications between the two mega corporations, a silent observer at a party. I was about to crash. The first sign of trouble was a terse, formal query from Neo Kyoto's chief negotiator to his counterpart at Ethelred. The message was polite on the surface, but a current of ice ran beneath the words. It referenced a discrepancy in the latest resource projection. It requested clarification. Seraphon's team responded with confident assurances. Clerical error, they claimed. A minor data entry slip-up that would be corrected immediately. They were arrogant, smug. They had no idea that the fire had already started. I watched them send a corrected data package, the original numbers restored. Too late, the seed of mistrust had been planted. Then I gave it a little water dot using. At K-Port, I intercepted the corrected package before it reached Neo Kyoto's servers. I didn't change the numbers this time. I did something far more subtle. I altered the package's authentication signature, correcting a single bit of data in its quantum seal. To Neo Kyoto's systems, it would look like a clumsy, amateurish attempt to forge a security certificate. It was the digital equivalent of sending a formal letter with a child's crayon signature. An insult. The response was immediate. All official communications from Neo Kyoto ceased. The channel went dead. They've gone dark, Mika said, her eyes wide as she stared at the flatlined activity monitor. What did you do? I made them look incompetent, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. I made it seem like Ethelred was not only trying to cheat them, but was also too clumsy to hide it properly. Greed is one thing, but greed combined with stupidity, that's unforgivable in their world. The silence lasted for 7 hours. Internally, Ethelred was in a state of controlled panic. I watched Seraphon's frantic messages to her team, demanding answers. The blame game began. The data analysts blamed the comms team. The comms team blamed the security division. Number 1 blamed the system. No one blamed Aura. The system was perfect. It was infallible. Then, Neo Kyoto made its move. It was not a private message. It was a public press release sent out across the global net. It was a masterpiece of corporate warfare. It announced, with deep regret, the indefinite suspension of their partnership negotiations with Ethelred, citing fundamental incompatibilities in corporate ethics and a lack of confidence in data integrity. It didn't explicitly accuse them of anything. It didn't have to. The implication was clear. Ethelred was untrustworthy. Ethelred was corrupt. Check the markets, I told Mika, my voice low. She didn't need to be told twice. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, bringing up the global stock exchange feeds. Ethelred's stock, once a pillar of stability, was plummeting, a sheer vertical drop of red. Gods, Mika whispered. They're hemorrhaging billions. They're losing billions an hour. This is phase 2, I said, watching the numbers fall. The cracks are starting to show. The next 48 hours were a symphony of destruction, and I was its conductor. The board members of Ethelred, once Seraphine's loyal lapdogs, were turning on her. I read their encrypted back-channel communications, a flurry of panic and recrimination. How could she let this happen? One wrote. Her arrogance has ruined us, wrote another. They were sharks, smelling blood in the water. Her blood, Seraphina fought back. She scheduled an emergency board meeting. She prepared a presentation full of projections and damage control strategies. She was trying to plug a hole in a dam with her bare hands. She still believed she could control the narrative. She still believed she was the smartest person in the room. It was time for my most personal touch. It was time to let the monster know its ghost was real. While Mika monitored the accelerating chaos, I opened a new channel. A direct, anonymous line to Seraphine's private, ultra-secure terminal in her office at the top of the Ethelred spire. Bypassing her firewalls was trivial. I moved through them like a memory. She was alone in her office. I could see her through the reflection on her dark monitor. She was pacing, her perfect golden hair slightly disheveled. Her mask of calm control was gone, replaced by a raw, naked panic. She was talking to herself, her voice sharp with fury. I typed a single word, and I sent it .calypso. It wasn't a name from our business. It wasn't a code. It was the name of a stray cat we had found and cared for together back when we were young and poor and full of dreams, working out of a tiny apartment that always smelled of rain and cheap coffee. A secret that belonged only to the two of us. A name from a life she had tried to bury. I watched her reflection. She stopped pacing. She froze, her head cocked as if she'd heard a sound. She walked slowly to her desk and looked at the screen. I saw her face drain of all color. The panic in her eyes was replaced by something else entirely, a primal, absolute terror. Her hands trembled as she typed a reply. Who is this? I let her wait for a full minute, the silence stretching, tightening. Then I replied, You left me in the rain. It was the last thing I'd said to her that day, as her security guards threw me out of the tower. A whispered, broken plea that she had ignored, turning her back and walking away without a second glance. Her reaction was everything I had hoped for and more. She screamed. A raw, ragged sound of pure horror. She scrambled backward, knocking. Over her chair, her eyes locked on the screen as if a demon had just emerged from it. She knew. In that instant, she knew. It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't a rival. It was Caitlin. I severed the connection. The show was over. The seed was planted, not in the system, but in her soul. She wouldn't sleep now. She would see my face in every shadow. The ghost was no longer in the machine. It was in her head. What did you do? Mika asked, turning to me. She must have heard the echo of the scream through my open audio feed. Reminded her that I exist, I said, my voice empty of emotion. The board meeting is in 1 hour. It's time for phase 3. The Ethelred boardroom was on the top floor, a sterile expanse of glass and steel overlooking the entirety of Feridia. It was designed to project power, to make its occupants feel like gods. Today, it was a cage. Seraphina stood at the head of a long obsidian table, facing her board of 12. I watched through the room's main holographic projector, its own. camera feed routed directly to my terminal. I was a silent, invisible 13th member at the table. Serafina looked terrible. Her makeup couldn't conceal the dark circles under her eyes or the pallor of her skin. Her voice, usually so smooth and confident, was brittle. She was trying to sell them a recovery plan, but her words were hollow. The board members weren't listening. They were vultures, circling, waiting for the moment to strike. Your strategy is irrelevant, Serafina, said a grim-faced man named Marcus Thorne, the most senior board member. The issue here is a catastrophic failure of leadership. The market has lost faith in you. We have lost faith in you. A murmur of agreement went around the table. The coup was happening. They were about to demand her resignation. It was all playing out exactly as I had planned. But they were all mistaken. They thought they were taking control. They had no idea that control was never theirs to begin. I looked at Mika. She sat at her own terminal, her face a mask of concentration. Our two stations were networked, synced to the nanosecond. She had control of the internal systems, security, power, local networks. I had the master key to Aura's core. Ready? I asked that. She met my gaze and gave a single sharp nod. On your mark. Now, I said. On the screen, I watched as Serafina opened her mouth to argue with Thorne, but no words came out. Instead, every screen in the room, the main hollow projector, the board members' personal tablets, the wall displays flickered and went black. The lights in the room dimmed to a faint emergency red. A collective gasp went through the room. What is this? Thorne demanded, his voice booming. Security. But the security feed was dead. The doors were locked. They were sealed in. It's a system malfunction, one of the tech-focused board members said, frantically tapping at his dead tablet. Serafina, what is going on with your OS? It's not my OS, a new voice said. The voice was calm, cold, and amplified, coming from every speaker in the room. My voice, the main hollow projector, flickered back to life. But it wasn't showing market data or corporate logos. It was showing a face, my face. Not the pale, haunted face of the ghost from the undergrid, but the face from 5 years ago, pulled from an old personnel file. Healthy, confident. The face of Aura's true architect. I saw Seraphine's legs give out. She collapsed into her chair, her face a mask of utter devastation. She was looking at the ghost she thought she had buried. Hello, Serafina, I said, my voice echoing in. The silent room. It's been a long time. I let my gaze drift across the stunned faces of the board members. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kaylin. And 5 years ago, your CEO, with the help of some of you in this very room, framed me for a crime I did not commit. She stole my work, she stole my life, and she left me for dead. I let that sink in. The silence was absolute. She built her empire on a lie, my amplified voice continued. And she did it using my system, Aura, but she never truly understood it. She never knew about the contingencies I built into its core, the keys that only I hold. On the screen, my image was replaced by a stream of data, encrypted emails, fabricated reports, the proof of the conspiracy undeniable and stark. Seraphine's crime, laid bare for them all to see. You have all been living in a house I built, I said, my face reappearing. And your lease has expired. I gave Mika the signal. One by one, the board members' remaining access to the network was severed. I watched their faces contort in confusion, then in panic as they realized their credentials were no longer valid. Their corporate accounts, their stock portfolios, their identities within the Aura network, all frozen. Deleted. Finally, it was just Serafina. She stared at my image, tears streaming down her face, not tears of remorse, tears of defeat. Why? She whispered, the single word picked up by the room's sensitive microphones. You asked me that once before. I said, my voice devoid of heat. When I asked you why you were doing it, do you remember your answer? I paused. You said, because I can. A very honest answer. And now I'm returning the favor. I'm doing this. Because I can. With the final keystroke, I severed her connection. Her identity as CEO of Ethelred, her vast fortune, her power, it all vanished in a silent cascade of deleting code. She was now what she had made me, a nobody, a ghost. The lights in the boardroom returned to normal. The screens flickered back, on, all showing the Ethelred corporate logo, stable and serene. As if nothing had happened, the doors slid open. The board members were free to go, but they were ruined men and women, stripped of their power, left with nothing but the knowledge of their complicity. Simultaneously, across all of Viridia, on every public screen, every home terminal, every private datapad, my face appeared. An emergency broadcast from the Aura system itself. Citizens of Viridia, I said, my voice calm and authoritative. My name is Caitlin. I am the original architect of the Aura operating system. For the past 5 years, the system and your city have been under the control of a corrupt and criminal enterprise, Ethelred, led by Serafina Valerius. That ends today. I presented the evidence, a condensed, easily digestible version of Seraphine's crimes. Ethelred has been dissolved. Its leadership has been retired. There has been a critical system error. I am here to correct it. I am resuming my position as Chief Administrator of Aura. There is no cause for alarm. All city systems will remain operational. Stability will be restored. A new era of transparency and progress begins now. The broadcast ended. My face vanished from the city's screens, replaced by the normal flow of information dot in the vast, dusty silence of the server farm. I leaned back in my chair. It was over. The rage that had fueled me for 5 years, the cold fire in my gut, was gone, and its place was nothing, just a vast, quiet emptiness. The silence of a goal achieved. Mika came and stood behind me, placing a hand on my shoulder. We both looked at the main monitor, which now showed a simple, elegant line of text against a black background. Aura system online. Administrator Kellen, you did it. Kai, Mika said softly, you won. I stared at the screen, at my name. Now linked to the most powerful operating system on the planet. I had won. I had taken everything from Serafina. I had my justice. I had my revenge. But my reflection in the dark screen looked just like the ghost I'd been for 5 years. Pale, alone. What now? Mika asked, her voice echoing the question that was forming in the empty space inside me. I looked out past the screens as if I could see through the walls of our sanctuary to the sea beyond. My city, my system, my cage. Now, I said, my voice as quiet as the dust motes dancing in the air. We get to work. My words, we get to work, hung in the cold, dusty air of the server farm, a statement of intent that felt laughably small compared to the seismic event we had just triggered. Winning was one thing, holding the territory was another entirely. The emptiness I felt wasn't an ending. It was the terrifying, expansive silence of a blank page. The ghost had triumphed, but the woman Kaylin now had to rule. Work? Mika echoed, her voice pulling me from my reverie. She gestured at the bank of monitors, which were now alive with a chaotic storm of incoming data. Kai, the entire global network is screaming. Viridia's emergency services are in chaos. The city guard is trying to break into the Ethelred tower. The corporate sector thinks it's under attack from a foreign power. Work doesn't quite cover it. This is triage on a planetary scale. She was right. My neat surgical coup had been a success inside the bubble of the boardroom, but out in the real world, I had ripped the central nervous system out of the city. and the body was convulsing. My broadcast was meant to reassure, but it had likely terrified a million people. A dead woman, a ghost in the machine, had just declared herself queen. Okay, I said, the analytical part of my mind clicking back into place, shoving the disorienting emptiness aside. Control, that was the first. Principle. Mika locked down all external access to Aura's core. No one gets in or out without our express authentication. Reinforce the shields on our location. We're dark. We're a black hole. Nothing gets traced back here. Already on it, she confirmed, her fingers a blur across her keyboard. I'm routing their breach attempts into feedback loops. They're effectively attacking themselves. Good. My attention turned to the city. I need to stabilize the essentials. Reroute command of the VCG, the Viridia City Guard, from Ethelred's defunct security hub directly to this terminal. I'll address the guard commander directly. We need boots on the ground to maintain order, not storm a building that's already mine. I began to code, my own fingers flying, weaving new pathways in the system, redirecting the flow of power. Aura responded to my touch like an extension of my own body. The system was calming, obeying its true master. Next, emergency services, medical, fire, transport. They're running on automated protocols, but the human dispatchers are panicking. I need to get them a message. A calm voice, reassurance. I isolated their communication network. I wasn't going to show my face again. Not yet. I synthesized a voice, a calm, authoritative, and utterly anonymous male voice. A featureless symbol of authority. The message was simple. There has been a systems administration change. Your automated protocols are fully functional. Ethelred, corporate command has been dissolved. Your new directives will come directly from the Aura Central Core. Maintain your positions. Respond to all civilian needs. Further instructions will follow. It's a stopgap, I murmured, more to myself than to Mika. It buys us a few hours. What about them? Mika asked, her voice low. She nodded toward a small, muted window on her screen. It showed a live feed of the Ethelred boardroom. The board members were huddled together, lost and confused. Serafina was still collapsed in her chair, her face buried in her hands. She was no longer a CEO. She was just a woman in a glass box, stripped of everything. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something. It wasn't pity. It was disgust at her weakness, at the ease with which she crumbled once her power was gone. I had survived 5 years as a ghost. She hadn't lasted 5 minutes. They are assets, I said, my voice cold and hard. Their biometrics, their now useless security credentials, are still tied to 100 offline accounts and safe deposit boxes. They are the keys to untangling the financial mess Serafina created. They aren't going anywhere. I accessed the boardroom's environmental controls. A faint hiss of gas, colorless and odorless, seeped into the room, a mild sedative. In 60 seconds, they would all be asleep. The VCG can pick them up when they get their new orders. They'll be detained. Quietly, Mika watched the feed as they slumped over, one by one. She didn't say anything, but I saw her shiver. I was putting my former colleagues and my greatest enemy to sleep like unruly animals. The ghost was already learning how to be a tyrant. The next 12 hours were the most intense of my life. Mika and I worked in a state of heightened, caffeine-fueled focus. We were no longer just rebels. We were the government, the city's sole source of stability. We rerouted power grids, stabilized communication networks, and fought off dozens of probing cyber attacks from rival corporations who were trying to take advantage of the chaos. I spoke to Viridia City Guard Commander Ava Rostova, a woman with a face like granite and a voice like gravel. I didn't show her my face, using the synthesized male voice instead. I gave her the location of the sleeping board members and a list of key Ethelred security personnel to detain for questioning. I gave her evidence of the corporate espionage and financial crimes, enough to give her the legal justification she needed. She was suspicious, her questions sharp and pointed, but the data was undeniable, and my control of the system was absolute. Reluctantly, she complied. She was a pragmatist. The city needed a leader, and for now, that leader was a disembodied voice from her command console. While I wrestled with the levers of power, Mika became my shield. She was a master of defense, building digital walls faster than our new enemies could tear them down. She augmented the server farm's physical defenses, activating old patrol drones and laser grids I hadn't even known were still functional. Our dusty sanctuary became a fortress dot in the midst of the storm. I found a quiet moment to look for her. Serafina. She and the board had been transferred to a secure VCG holding facility. A comfortable one. I wasn't a monster, not entirely. I accessed the surveillance feed for her cell. It was more like a small apartment than a prison. She was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at a blank wall. Her golden hair was lank, her expensive clothes were rumpled. She looked hollowed out. I opened a one-way audio link, just listening to the silence of her room. I don't know what I was expecting. Ranting? Weeping? There was nothing. Just the dead air of a life that had been deleted. I felt a sudden, sharp memory. Serafina and I, years ago, celebrating the initial funding for the Aura project. We had shared a bottle of cheap champagne on the roof of our apartment building, looking out at the lights of Viridia. "We're going to change the world, Kai," she had said, her eyes shining with genuine, uncorrupted ambition. Where did that woman go? When did the rot set in? Or was it always there and I was just too blind to see it? The question was a loose thread, and I was afraid to pull on it, afraid the entire fabric of my righteous anger would unravel. I closed the feed. She was a problem for another day. A ghost of my past I would have to eventually confront. Kai. Mika's voice was tense. "We have a problem. A big one." I turned my attention to her screen. She was displaying a satellite image of our location, the abandoned industrial sector. A ring of vehicles was forming a perimeter a few kilometers out. They weren't VCG. The vehicles were black, unmarked, military grade. "Who are they?" I asked. "I'm not sure," Mika said, tracing their communication signals. "The encryption is military spec, but it's not local. It's not from any corporate entity I can identify. It's foreign." My blood ran cold. The power vacuum. I had been so focused on Ethelred and Viridia that I had forgotten the larger world, the world that had been dealing with Serafina and Ethelred for years. The world that had treaties, alliances, and enemies. The Neo-Kyoto Syndicate. They hadn't just pulled out of the deal. They had seen the collapse of their rival as an opportunity. They weren't launching a cyber attack. They were launching an invasion. A quiet, surgical one, under the cover of the city's chaos. They were coming for Aura. They were coming for me. "They're deploying ground troops," Mika said, her voice strained. Her screen showed heat signatures, dozens of them, spreading out, moving with tactical precision towards our location. They knew where we were. Maybe they had tracked us during the hardware pickups. Maybe they had a source inside the city. It didn't matter. They were here. "They think this is a simple decapitation strike," I said, my mind racing through strategic options. "Take out the new administrator, seize the core, claim the system as salvage. A corporate takeover by force." "They have us surrounded," Mika said, stating the obvious. "The physical defenses will slow them down, but not for long. We're trapped." "We're not trapped," I countered, my voice hardening. "This server farm isn't just our base, it's a part of the system. They think they're attacking a building. They have no idea they're walking into the belly of the beast. I turned to my main console, my fingers flying across the keys. I wasn't just a coder anymore. I was a general, and this abandoned industrial park was about to become my battlefield. Mika, give me control of the sector's infrastructure. All of it. Power, water, sanitation, automated factory systems. Everything. You've got it, she said, her fear giving way to a grim resolve. I smiled, a thin, feral smile. The soldiers of Neo Kyoto thought they were the hunters. They were about to find out they were the rats, and they had just walked into my maze. Let's show them, I said, my eyes glowing in the reflection of the screen, what aura can really do.